Mark and Anna had always believed their neighborhood was the perfect place to live. It was a small town with quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and an unspoken feeling of safety. For Mark, who had spent years in the Navy as a SEAL commander, this peace was something he treasured deeply. After so many years away from home and in dangerous places, Mark wanted nothing more than a calm and simple life with Anna, his wife. They had moved into their new house just a year ago. It was not big or fancy, but it was theirs, a little house with a small garden in front and a white picket fence. Anna loved the garden. She spent many hours planting flowers, trimming the bushes, and watching the butterflies dance in the sunlight. Mark liked to sit on the porch after work and watch the world go by, feeling grateful for a life that was finally slow and easy. The neighborhood itself was quiet most of the time. The children played in the streets during the day, and neighbors often stopped to say hello or share a cup of coffee. There was an old oak tree in the middle of the park where people gathered for small events or just to enjoy the shade. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other by name. But recently, something had started to change. The local homeowners association, better known as the HOA, had grown stricter. They began setting new rules for the community. Some were simple, like keeping lawns trimmed or not parking cars on the street overnight. Others were more confusing, like limits on how high a flower bush could grow or rules about the color of curtains visible from outside. Mark and Anna did their best to follow the rules, but it felt like the HOA was watching them closely. The people in charge seemed more interested in control than community. It was a shift that made Mark uneasy, though he kept his worries to himself. One afternoon, Mark sat in his usual spot on the porch, reading the newspaper. Anna was in the garden, planting new flowers for spring. The sun was warm on their faces, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh soil and blooming flowers. Everything looked calm. That calm would soon be broken. As Anna knelt by a bed of bright tulips, a man appeared at the edge of the yard. He was dressed in a uniform that looked official: dark blue pants, a light blue shirt with a badge on the chest, and a cap with a shiny emblem. Anna did not recognize him. She thought he might be someone from the city or maybe the HOA checking the neighborhood. The man walked toward her with a serious look. "You're breaking the rules," he said, his voice low and firm. Anna looked up, surprised. "I'm sorry. What rule is that?" "The flowers are too tall," the man said, pointing to the tulips and bushes. "They're blocking the sidewalk and not allowed." Anna frowned. She had checked with the HOA office before planting anything. She knew the rules and believed she had followed them carefully. "I spoke with the HOA office last month. They said this garden was okay as long as it was neat." The man's face did not soften. Instead, his eyes narrowed. "That's not what I was told. You need to cut these plants down today, or you'll face a fine." Anna felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had always been polite and respectful, but this man's tone was harsh and unfair. "I will check again," she said calmly. "But please, there's no need to be so harsh." The man took a step closer. "I'm just doing my job." Anna stood up slowly, her hands still dirty from the soil. "I understand that, but slapping rules on people without real cause isn't fair. I'm a homeowner here, and I deserve respect." The man's face twisted into an angry sneer. "You don't know who you're talking to." Before Anna could respond, the man suddenly raised his hand and slapped her lightly on the cheek. Time seemed to freeze. Anna's eyes widened in shock. Her hand went to her face, feeling the sharp sting where the man had struck her. She stepped back, tears welling in her eyes. The neighbors who had been watching from their windows gasped, but none moved forward to stop him. Mark, who had been inside getting a drink, heard the sudden noise outside. He rushed out and saw the man standing too close to Anna, who was trembling. The man looked at Mark, his eyes filled with challenge. Mark's heart pounded. He could see the fear in Anna's eyes and the anger in the man's. But Mark did not panic. He had faced much worse in his Navy days. This man was no threat. Calmly, Mark stepped between Anna and the man. "That's enough," he said in a firm voice. The man blinked, surprised at Mark's steady tone. Mark looked the man over. This wasn't a real police officer or security guard. Just a man pretending to have power. But Mark didn't want trouble, only to protect his wife and bring peace back to their home. "Step back," Mark said. "You're not welcome here if you think hurting people is part of your job." The man hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like he might argue. But then, without another word, he turned and walked away down the street. Anna leaned on Mark's shoulder, still shaken. "Thank you," she whispered. Mark wrapped his arm around her. "I'm here. I'll always protect you." That evening, as the sun set over the quiet neighborhood, Mark and Anna sat on their porch. The calm had returned, but they both knew things would not be the same. A shadow had crept into their peaceful life, and Mark was determined to make sure it didn't grow any darker. The morning after the shocking event, Mark woke early, his mind racing. He kept replaying what had happened in the garden. The fake Hoa enforcer's sudden aggression had shaken Anna deeply. Mark wanted to protect her, but he also wanted to understand more about this man who dared to threaten his family. Anna was quieter than usual that day. Usually cheerful and full of laughter, she moved carefully around the house, avoiding the garden that now held a painful memory. Mark watched her with concern. He wished he could take away the fear that shadowed her eyes. After breakfast, Mark decided to visit the Hoa office. He wanted to learn everything about this man, the one who claimed to have authority but clearly did not. Maybe if Mark could find out more, he could stop this before it got worse. The Hoa office was in a small building at the end of their street. Mark entered and was greeted by a woman named Mrs. Gray, the Hoa secretary. She smiled politely but looked tense. "Good morning, Mrs. Gray. I want to ask about the new rules and the man who visited my wife yesterday," Mark said quietly. Mrs. Gray's smile faded. "Ah, yes. That man, his name is Mr. Harris. He's not officially part of the Hoa. He said he was hired to enforce the rules, but there is no record of him anywhere in our files." Mark's eyes narrowed. "So he has no right to act as a cop or enforcer here?" "None at all," Mrs. Gray admitted. "We warned the board about him, but he's still been showing up, causing trouble. We're trying to handle it, but it's difficult because he refuses to leave." Mark thanked Mrs. Gray and left the office, feeling anger growing inside him. Someone was pretending to be a law officer to scare people and force rules that didn't exist. And worst of all, he had hurt Anna. Back at home, Anna was outside, slowly watering her plants. Mark joined her, standing quietly by her side. She looked up and gave a small, sad smile. "I don't understand why he did that," Anna said softly. "Why would someone hit me like that, just to scare me about flowers?" Mark shook his head. "Some people feel powerful only when others are afraid of them. It's not right, and it's not going to happen here." Anna's hands trembled as she wiped her eyes. "I was so scared, Mark. I didn't know what to do." Mark knelt beside her and took her hands gently. "You're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you again." The days that followed were tense. Mr. Harris, the fake enforcer, seemed to grow bolder. He visited other neighbors, giving unfair warnings and making threats. Some people were afraid to stand up to him, but a few neighbors quietly started talking about what was happening. One afternoon, Mark was at the community park when he heard a familiar voice raised in anger. He walked toward the sound and saw Mr. Harris arguing with a woman near the playground. The woman, Mrs. Lee, was an elderly neighbor who had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. Mr. Harris was telling Mrs. Lee that her fence was too high and that she needed to lower it immediately or face a fine. Mrs. Lee, known for her kind heart and gentle manner, stood her ground. "I've checked with the HOA office many times," Mrs. Lee said calmly. "My fence is exactly as the rules say." Mr. Harris sneered. "The rules say whatever I say they say." Mark stepped forward. "That's enough, Harris. You don't have the right to threaten people or lie about the rules." Mr. Harris looked Mark up and down, trying to find weakness. But Mark's calm, steady gaze told a different story. The man saw he was no match. "Mind your own business," Harris spat before turning to leave. Mark turned to Mrs. Lee and smiled gently. "You're not alone. We need to stand together." Mrs. Lee nodded. "Thank you, Mark. We've all been scared, but maybe now things will change." Word of Mark's intervention spread quickly. The neighbors, once quiet and fearful, began to feel hope. Mark's presence reminded them that they didn't have to live in fear of a man with no real power. That evening, Mark and Anna sat on their porch, watching the sun sink behind the trees. Anna leaned into Mark, finding comfort in his strength. "Do you think he'll come back?" Anna asked quietly. Mark looked out at the street, where children played and neighbors talked. "He might. But if he does, we won't be afraid. We'll face him together." Anna smiled softly. "I'm lucky to have you." Mark squeezed her hand. "And I'm lucky to have you." The next day, Mark started to organize meetings with the neighbors. They talked about their rights, about how to protect themselves, and about standing up to fear with unity. Slowly but surely, the community began to grow stronger. One evening, as Mark returned from a meeting, he found Anna waiting outside the house. She held a small notebook filled with names and stories of neighbors who wanted to help. "We're not alone," Anna said, her eyes shining with hope. "We're a community." Mark nodded, feeling proud. That's the most important thing. But deep inside, Mark knew the battle was just beginning. The fake enforcers' actions were more than just a simple problem, they were a test of courage, unity, and strength. And Mark was ready to protect his home and the people he loved, no matter what it took. The sun was beginning to set, casting long orange shadows across the quiet streets of the neighborhood. Mark had just returned from a meeting with several neighbors who wanted to stand against the fake enforcer, Mr. Harris. His heart was heavy but steady. He knew this fight would not be easy, but he was ready. As Mark pulled into the driveway of his home, he noticed Anna standing in the front yard, her arms crossed and a worried look on her face. Her eyes darted toward the street every few seconds. Mark hurried out of the car. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern rising in his voice. Anna's voice was shaky. "He's here, Mark. Mr. Harris is back." Mark's jaw tightened. He looked down the street and saw a tall figure standing near their neighbor's mailbox. It was the man in the fake uniform, his cap pulled low over his eyes. He seemed to be watching the houses carefully, as if looking for someone to threaten. Mark took a deep breath. He placed his hand gently on Anna's shoulder. "Stay inside, please. I'll handle this." Anna nodded, biting her lip but trusting Mark's calm strength. She slipped back into the house and closed the door quietly behind her. Mark stepped onto the sidewalk and walked toward the man. His steps were slow but steady. The fake enforcer turned as he heard Mark approaching. "Back again, huh?" Mark said in a low, calm voice. The man sneered. "I'm just doing my job. This neighborhood needs order." Mark's eyes narrowed. "Order? By threatening people and slapping women?" The man's expression darkened. "You don't know who you're messing with." Mark smiled slightly, but it was not a friendly smile. "Actually, I do. And I'm warning you, if you try to hurt anyone here again, you'll regret it." The fake enforcer took a step forward, but Mark's stance was strong and steady. His years as a Navy SEAL commander had taught him how to stay calm under pressure and how to protect those who could not protect themselves. "Walk away," Mark said firmly. "This ends now." For a moment, the man hesitated. Then, without another word, he turned and walked down the street, his shoulders tense but defeated. Mark watched him go, feeling a rush of relief. He knew this wasn't the end, but at least for now, his wife and neighbors were safe. Back inside, Anna opened the door and looked at Mark with grateful eyes. "Thank you for standing up for me," she whispered. Mark pulled her into a gentle hug. "I will always stand up for you." That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, thinking about how fragile peace could be and how important it was to protect it. He thought about his time in the Navy, the dangers he had faced, and the lessons he had learned about courage and leadership. But this was different. This was his home, his family, and his community. And no matter how small the enemy, he would fight to keep them safe. The next day, Mark met with the HOA board. He wanted to make sure the fake enforcer would not be allowed back. The board members were surprised by Mark's calm confidence and the clear evidence he brought. "We cannot have someone threatening our residents," Mark said firmly. "He has no right to act as an officer. We need to remove him and make sure this never happens again." The board agreed to take action and promised to strengthen their security measures. Mark felt a small victory but knew he had to stay alert. In the following weeks, the neighborhood began to change. The residents grew closer, sharing stories and watching out for each other. Anna started a community garden club, inviting neighbors to help care for the green spaces and build friendships. Mark taught some of the neighbors basic self-defense moves and safety tips. He wanted everyone to feel strong and prepared, not afraid. One afternoon, as Mark and Anna walked through the neighborhood park, they saw children playing and neighbors talking, laughing together. It was a reminder of why they fought so hard. Anna smiled at Mark. "We're making a difference." Mark nodded. "Yes, but we must keep watching. Real peace takes work." That evening, as they sat on their porch, a neighbor named Mrs. Wilson came by. She was an older woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. "I just want to thank you both," she said softly. "You've given us hope again." Mark shook her hand warmly. "We're all in this together." Anna joined them, her smile bright and full of hope. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Mark felt a deep sense of purpose. The road ahead might be difficult, but with Anna by his side and a community united, he was ready to face whatever came next. Days passed since Mark had confronted the fake HOA enforcer, but the calm in the neighborhood still felt fragile. Everyone was waiting, watching, wondering if the man named Harris would return. Mark spent much of his time talking to neighbors and organizing community meetings. He wanted to make sure everyone understood their rights and knew how to protect themselves. He was determined that no one else would suffer like Anna had. One afternoon, Mark received a call from Mrs. Gray, the HOA secretary. Her voice sounded worried. "Mark, we need to meet. I have something important to tell you." Mark agreed to meet her at the small cafe near the park. When he arrived, Mrs. Gray looked around nervously before speaking. "Mark, I found something strange," she said quietly. "About that man Harris. He's not just pretending to be an enforcer. He's been involved in other neighborhoods too. People say he tricks communities into thinking he has power, then causes trouble." Mark's eyes grew sharp. "How is he able to do that?" Mrs. Gray pulled out a folder with papers and photos. "He uses fake badges, fake uniforms, and lies about his position. Some reports say he threatens residents and tries to make money from fines that aren't real." Mark frowned deeply. This was worse than he thought. The man was not just dangerous to their neighborhood, he was a scammer who used fear and lies to take advantage of people. "We have to stop him," Mark said firmly. "But we need proof, something the police can use." Mrs. Gray nodded. "I've collected some reports from neighbors and some pictures from security cameras. It's not much, but it's a start." Mark felt a new determination. "I'll talk to the police tomorrow. This man needs to face real consequences." That evening, Mark and Anna sat at their kitchen table, going over what Mrs. Gray had shared. Anna looked worried but hopeful. "Do you think the police will help?" she asked. Mark took her hand. "They will. But we need to stay strong and keep working together." Over the next few days, Mark met with the local police chief. He showed the evidence and explained everything about Harris and the problems he was causing. The chief listened carefully. "Thank you, Mark. This is serious. We'll start an investigation and keep an eye on the neighborhood." Mark felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The law was on their side. Meanwhile, in the neighborhood, word spread about the investigation. Some neighbors were angry at being tricked, others scared to speak up. But more and more people began to support Mark and Anna. One afternoon, a small group of neighbors gathered at the park. Mark stood before them, his voice steady. "We can't let fear control us. We must stand together, watch out for each other, and make sure no one like Harris can hurt us again." The crowd nodded, their faces showing hope and determination. Anna smiled and added, "We are a community. And a strong community protects its people." Days later, the HOA board held a meeting to discuss the situation. Mark and Anna were there, along with other neighbors who wanted change. The HOA president spoke. "We regret the trouble caused by this man. We will improve security and communication. We want to make this neighborhood safe for everyone." Mark felt proud. Their voices were being heard. At home, Anna started a newsletter to keep neighbors informed. She shared safety tips, news about the HOA, and stories from the community. The newsletter brought people closer and gave them confidence. One afternoon, Anna received a letter from a neighbor named Mrs. Jenkins. She thanked Anna for the newsletter and wrote about her own experience with Harris, which she had been too scared to share before. Anna showed the letter to Mark. "This is why we have to keep going," she said. Mark nodded. Every story helps. The next few weeks were busy. Police patrols increased, and more neighbors joined meetings and community events. Harris had not been seen since the police began investigating. Mark and Anna felt a new sense of peace growing in the neighborhood. But they both knew the fight for safety and respect was not over. One evening, as they walked through their garden, Mark looked at Anna and said, "We have come far, but we must stay ready. People like Harris don't give up easily." Anna squeezed his hand. "I'm not afraid anymore. Not when we are together." Mark smiled, feeling a warm strength inside. Together, they had turned fear into courage. And their neighborhood was beginning to heal. The neighborhood was slowly healing. The once tense streets were now filled with laughter and friendly greetings. Children played freely in the park, and neighbors met each other with smiles and small talk. Mark and Anna felt hopeful, but deep inside, Mark knew the danger was not completely gone. Mark's past had taught him many lessons. His years as a Navy SEAL commander had made him alert to even the smallest signs of trouble. Sometimes, the quiet before a storm was the most dangerous time of all. One afternoon, Mark was in his garage, cleaning some old equipment. Anna was inside, preparing dinner. Suddenly, Mark's phone rang. It was the local police chief. "Mark, we found something you should see," the chief said. Mark's heart beat faster. "What is it?" "We caught Harris last night," the chief explained. "He was trying to sell fake badges in another town nearby. We have enough evidence to keep him in custody." Mark let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Thank you, Chief. That's good news." But the chief's voice was serious. "We're still investigating. There might be others working with him. We'll keep you updated." Mark hung up and looked at the evening sky. It felt like a small victory but not the end of the battle. When Anna came out of the house, Mark shared the news. She smiled but looked worried. "Do you think he will come back here?" Mark shook his head. "I don't think so. But if he does, we will be ready." Days passed, and the neighborhood felt peaceful. Mark and Anna continued their work to unite the community. They organized neighborhood watches and safety workshops. Slowly, fear turned into confidence. One evening, as Mark and Anna walked through the park, they saw a new family moving in. The father was carrying boxes, while the mother waved at neighbors who came to welcome them. Mark smiled. "This is what we fight for, the chance to live safely and happily." Anna nodded. "Yes, and to make sure no one ruins that peace." But not all shadows had disappeared. One night, Mark received a call from a neighbor, Mr. Davis. "Mark, I think someone is watching my house. I heard strange noises outside." Mark didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket and went to Mr. Davis's house. When he arrived, Mr. Davis pointed to the dark street. "I saw a figure near my fence. It disappeared when I turned on the light." Mark scanned the area, his eyes sharp. "I'll stay here for a while. If it's Harris or someone else, they won't get away." Hours passed quietly. Mark kept watch, listening to every sound. Just as he was about to leave, a shadow moved near the bushes. Mark moved quickly and caught the figure, a young man holding a camera. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Mark demanded. The man looked surprised and nervous. I'm sorry. I was just curious about the neighborhood." Mark frowned. "Curious? Taking pictures at night? That doesn't seem right." The young man hesitated, then admitted, "I work for someone. They want to know who's protecting this place." Mark's heart sank. Harris might have had help, after all. The next morning, Mark told Anna and the police what had happened. The police promised to investigate, and Mark knew he had to be more careful. Anna looked at him with concern. "Do you think we can keep everyone safe?" Mark smiled gently. "We will. We have to." The following week, Mark organized a community meeting at the park. Many neighbors gathered, their faces showing both hope and worry. Mark spoke clearly. "We have to watch each other and be ready. There may be more threats, but we are strong. Together, we can face anything." Anna added, "We will not let fear control us. We will protect our homes, our families, and our peace." The neighbors nodded, feeling united and brave. That night, as Mark and Anna sat on their porch, they looked out at the stars. The quiet was comforting, but Mark's mind was alert. "I've faced danger before," he said softly, "but this is different. It's personal." Anna rested her head on his shoulder. "We're in this together. Always." Mark smiled, feeling the strength of their bond. No matter what came next, he knew they would face it side by side. The neighborhood was slowly settling into a new rhythm. Mark and Anna had become pillars of strength and hope for their community. With the police now involved and the fake enforcer behind bars, things seemed peaceful on the surface. But Mark's instincts told him otherwise. Mark often thought about the shadows that had lingered around their quiet streets. Just because Harris was caught didn't mean the danger was truly gone. Sometimes, those who work in the dark have more friends than anyone realizes. One crisp morning, Mark woke early and went for a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting soft light over the houses and trees. The streets were quiet except for the occasional chirp of birds. As he passed by Mrs. Lee's house, he noticed her watering her plants. She smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mark." "Good morning, Mrs. Lee," he replied. "How are you today?" "Oh, much better, thanks to you and Anna. The neighborhood feels safer now," she said. Mark nodded. "We still have to stay careful, but we're getting there." Mrs. Lee smiled softly. "It's good to see everyone coming together." Mark continued his walk, thinking about the many neighbors who had faced fear but now found strength. It was a reminder that peace was built not by one person, but by a community working together. When Mark returned home, Anna was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. "Good morning," she said, smiling. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Mark said. "But I'm always watching." Anna looked at him, understanding his quiet vigilance. "You've always protected others. It's part of who you are." Mark took her hand. "I want to protect this place, this family, and these people." The day passed peacefully until late afternoon when Mark received a call from the police chief. "We found more evidence," the chief said. "It looks like Harris was part of a larger group involved in similar schemes. They have been targeting communities nearby." Mark's mind raced. "Do you think they will come here?" "It's possible," the chief warned. "We're increasing patrols and working to find everyone involved." Mark thanked him and hung up. He shared the news with Anna, who listened carefully. "This is bigger than we thought," she said softly. Mark nodded. "We have to be ready." That evening, Mark called a special meeting at the community center. Neighbors gathered, some anxious, others determined. Mark spoke firmly. "This is not just about Harris anymore. There is a group that wants to scare us, but they don't know who they are dealing with." Anna stepped forward. "We will not let fear win. We will watch out for each other and protect our homes." The room filled with nods and murmurs of agreement. The community was ready to face the challenge together. Over the next few days, Mark worked closely with the police, sharing information and organizing neighborhood patrols. He taught neighbors simple ways to stay safe and encouraged them to report anything unusual. Anna continued her work with the newsletter, keeping everyone informed and connected. She also started a Neighbors Helping Neighbors program to support those who felt vulnerable. One evening, as Mark and Anna sat by the fireplace, Mark looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you for standing with me through all of this." Anna smiled warmly. "We're a team. And I believe in us." Just as they began to relax, Mark's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You're getting too close. Stop now, or face the consequences." Mark's heart pounded. He showed the message to Anna. "This is serious." Anna's eyes widened. Who would send this? Mark's mind went back to the warning from the police. The group behind Harris was still out there, watching, waiting. "We won't back down," Mark said, his voice steady. "But we have to be smart." The next day, Mark increased security around their home. He installed cameras and made sure neighbors knew to stay alert. The community's spirit remained strong, but the threat was real. Mark and Anna knew that their fight was far from over. As night fell, they stood together by the window, looking out at the quiet street. Mark placed his arm around Anna's shoulders. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Anna rested her head against him. Together. The calm was comforting, but the tension hung like a quiet storm ready to break. Mark knew the road ahead would test them all. But with courage, unity, and love, they would stand firm and protect the home and people they cherished. The night was quiet, but Mark could feel the weight of the unknown pressing on his mind. The warning text from the previous day echoed in his thoughts. Whoever was behind Harris had not given up. They were watching, waiting for a moment to strike. Anna stood beside him, her hand in his, sharing the same silent determination. Together, they had faced fear and uncertainty, but they were ready for whatever came next. The next morning, Mark went to the neighborhood meeting with a clear plan. The community center was filled with familiar faces, neighbors who had once been frightened but now stood with courage in their eyes. Mark addressed the crowd. "We know the threat is still out there. But we have something stronger: unity. We will watch out for each other, and we will not let fear control our lives." Anna stepped forward, holding up copies of the latest neighborhood newsletter. "We will share information quickly, support each other, and work closely with the police. Together, we are stronger than any threat." The neighbors nodded, voices rising in agreement. It was a moment of hope, a promise that they would stand as one. Days passed with increased police patrols and neighborhood watches. Mark and Anna encouraged everyone to keep their doors locked but hearts open. They organized group walks, community events, and safety workshops. One afternoon, Mark noticed a new family moving into the house across the street. He walked over to introduce himself and welcome them. The father smiled warmly. "Thank you, Mark. We've heard about how strong this community is." Mark nodded. "We look out for each other here. That's what makes us safe." As the weeks went by, the tension in the neighborhood began to ease. The sense of fear that had once gripped the streets was replaced by laughter and friendship. One evening, as Mark and Anna sat on their porch, the phone rang. It was the police chief. "We have good news," the chief said. "We arrested 2 more men connected to Harris and his group. The threat is breaking apart." Mark felt relief flood through him. "Thank you for your hard work." The chief added, Your community's courage and cooperation made a difference. You helped us stop something bigger. Mark shared the news with Anna, who smiled and said, "We did it together." That night, the neighborhood held a small celebration in the park. Neighbors brought food, music filled the air, and children played under the stars. Mark and Anna looked around, seeing the joy on everyone's faces. It was a reminder of what they had fought for: a safe place to live, laugh, and love. Mrs. Lee came over to Mark and said, "You gave us hope when we needed it most." Mark shook her hand gently. "We all did. It was never just me." Anna stood beside him, her eyes shining. "We are stronger as a community. We protect each other." As the celebration continued, Mark thought about the journey they had been on. From fear and pain to strength and unity, their story was one of courage. Later that night, as the party ended and neighbors returned to their homes, Mark and Anna stood by their front door, looking out at the peaceful street. Mark wrapped his arm around Anna. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Anna smiled softly. Together. The fake enforcer and his threats had tried to break them, but instead, they had built something unbreakable. Mark knew that the fight for safety and respect was never truly over, but with the strength of their community and the love they shared, they would always stand tall. And in that quiet moment, under the calm night sky, Mark and Anna felt a deep peace, one born not from the absence of danger, but from the power of unity, courage, and hope.